99.5 FM broadcasting to New York and the tri-state area. I'm not, of course, with you, except in a manner of speaking, across the Atlantic and across the airwaves, because I'm broadcasting to you from our dear friends, the Catholic Media Information Office in Glasgow, in Bonnie, Scotland, where I'm ensconced prior to tomorrow's election to the Scottish Parliament. So, God willing, when I'm talking to you next week, I might be MSP Galloway. Honourable George Galloway, Member of the Scottish Parliament. Let's hope so, and if you're that way inclined, pray for me, please. Now, it's a rather different programme to normal in a number of ways. First of all, you'll already have noticed I'm quite a bit late. Not that it was any fault of mine. And there's no theme music, and there's no stings, as we call them, jingles. I don't know what you call them across the pond. You say tomato, I say tomato, but I think you know what I mean. Neither, sadly, will there be any listener calls. I know that many of you look forward to calling in, and I certainly like to debate with people from Staten Island, New Jersey, Connecticut, from Manhattan, from Queens, from the Bronx, and so on. But that'll have to be next week, because I understand that we're in the middle of a fund drive for the radio station, and I hope that that goes very well. And they certainly need to raise the cost of the ISDN telephone line that I'm making every week, which currently I'm paying myself, because I'm brought to you at absolutely no expense. I want you to know that. What a momentous couple of days. Ding dong, the wicked witch is dead. Or is he dead? I hear some of you say. Was he already dead? I hear others of you opine. Was he killed in the circumstances as declared by the Obama administration? Or rather, which of the circumstances declared by the Obama administration was he killed in? Because, of course, this is a story that's turning out to be movable. And who knows which will be the final position. Let me lay my own cards on the table, and they look like this. I believe, President Obama, that Osama bin Laden, public enemy number one, was killed in Abbottabad in Pakistan on the 1st of May. On that much, he and I can agree. I never believed for 1 minute that bin Laden was killed cowering behind his wife, which was a lie that was told by the US officials, which was a lie that was 3/4 of the way around the world before the truth had its boots on. It was the front page splash in right-wing newspapers all over the world. A very inflammatory and incendiary lie, because nothing could be more calculated to engender a backlash or a blowback than such a foul allegation about someone that some Muslims regard as something of a hero, and who still has quite a few supporters in the world who would be, I think, fairly easily calculated to be very angry at this slur, for that is what it was. Any man who would try to save his life by grabbing his wife and putting her in front of him, cowering behind his wife, would be beneath contempt, wouldn't he? And the second thing, of course, I should say that the US have clarified things, and turns out that Obama, who was cowering behind his wife in the first edition, by the second edition was not cowering behind his wife. The bin Laden that was killed in a firefight in the first edition had, by the time of the second edition, become unarmed. And the photographs are where? The video footage that the President and other officials of the US government watched live, real time. What a snuff movie that would have been. Well, none of the rest of us are able to see that because it's too gruesome. What? More gruesome than the attack on the Twin Towers in New York? More gruesome than the deaths of thousands of people in New York City on 9/11, 2001? More gruesome than people hurtling out of windows in the Twin Towers? people perishing, burning into ash? No, I don't think the reason that we're not seeing this film, these photographs, is because it's too gruesome. No. I think it's because the photographs and the footage will show that the story is not exactly as it was told to us, even in the second edition. I have to say that notwithstanding my agreement with President Obama that bin Laden was killed and there and on the 1st of May, I believe bin Laden's daughter's story, that bin Laden was taken alive and then executed in cold blood by the US service personnel. Now, I'm not necessarily even against that, but it's not a good look. And it's no wonder you wouldn't show a picture or a video of a cold-blooded execution, would it? Especially as it's our case that our Western civilization is, well, worthy of the term civilization. It's our case that the rule of law guides our actions, and that's what distinguishes us from the terrorist, from the savage, from the brute of the East. Now let me lay my cards further on the table. I despise Osama bin Laden. That's what I said when the House of Commons was recalled a couple of days after 9/11. I gave a speech in the House of Commons which won me the award of Parliamentary Debater of the Decade. And in that speech, I said this: I despise Osama bin Laden. The difference between me and you is that I always despised him. I despised him when the British and American governments were giving him guns and money and diplomatic and political support, when the Western media was hailing him as a freedom fighter. Did you know that Rambo 3 actually closes with a written dedication to the very quote-unquote freedom fighters that Osama bin Laden recruited and brought to fight? On the principle of my enemy's enemy is my friend, we supported bin Laden to the nth degree. But he was a Frankenstein monster, you see. And those who play around with Frankenstein monsters clearly haven't read the novel to the end. Because in the end, a monster always breaks loose and can no longer be controlled. And that's exactly what I think about Osama bin Laden. Do I think it will change anything that he's been killed in whatever circumstances? No, I don't. He was living in a house under the noses of the Pakistani military top brass. It's inconceivable to me that the Pakistan government did not know that he was there. I mean, this was a house 8 times larger than any other house in that town. It had walls that were 10 foot high. It had internal walls that were 7 foot high. It had no windows. It burned its garbage rather than put it out. It had a family living in it which matched the profile of the family of Osama bin Laden, who is, I remind you, or was, 6 foot 7 inches tall. I mean, you don't have to be Inspector Clouseau to discover that something's up there. And, of course, this great mansion, worth $1 million, which, believe me, in Pakistan goes a very, very long way in property terms. We're not talking about a Brooklyn brownstone for $1 million. We're talking about a castle for $1 million. This castle had no telephone line and no internet connection. Hello? Something funny going on behind those 10-foot walls and that building with no windows. So, if you tell me that the Pakistani government did not know that bin Laden was there, I say if you believe that, you'll believe anything. The question is, did the United States government know that he was living there all that time? Well, that's just one of the questions. Will it change anything? I say no, because if he had no telephone line and no internet connection, by definition, he was not controlling terrorists on the ground in London, Madrid, or, God forbid, in the United States of America. He clearly was not controlling anybody or anything. And when the US Navy SEALs ended up in his bedroom, it turns out he didn't even have a weapon. In any case, the Arab revolutions, which have burst upon the world scene since last December and have rolled across the whole of the Arab world, from Morocco to Bahrain, are a far more effective way of changing things than individual acts of heinous, atrocious terrorism. Bin Laden achieved nothing with his criminal acts except make everything worse for the Muslims in the world. But the Arab revolutions have already changed everything, and that change will continue. Just in the last few days, the Egyptian government has announced the opening 24/7 of the gate at Rafah, which was closed most of the time and thus besieged the Palestinian people in Gaza. Just in the last 72 hours, an Egyptian brokered truce between the Palestinian factions has led any minute to the reconstruction of a Palestinian national unity government. So the siege of Gaza is over. The bitter division within the Palestinian national movement is over. But these are just two of the fruits of the Egyptian revolution. The Egyptians themselves are picking the fruits off the tree for themselves. There will soon be a free and democratic government in Egypt. Even sooner there'll be one in Tunisia. And of course the Arab Revolution continues to roll into many countries and ultimately into all of them. So it's my case that Bin Laden was in any case, politically speaking, all washed up. He could have been a contender, but he's all washed up even before he was thrown into the Arabian Sea. And what's that all about, by the way? We treated his body in accordance with Islamic rites, they announced, before they dumped him in the sea to be eaten by the fishes. Memo to President Obama: Muslims must be buried in the ground, earth to earth, ashes to ashes. I suspect that he was buried at sea for the same reason that we haven't seen the pictures or the video. Now, I'm aware that all of this is all contested and contestable. There will be people who say that the American story, whatever it ends up as, is undoubtedly correct. There will be others, I'm sure, just wishing this was a phone-in today, who will be trying to tell me that Obama either never lived or died long ago. And I've got my own radio show on Friday nights at 10 p.m. London time on talksport.net, at which I'll have 3 hours, I've no doubt, to debate and discuss these matters, and with such people. But today, I'm here just until 10 a.m., and I can't take calls. But what I can do is talk to a guest that I had lined up. His name is Stephen Salaita. He's a prominent American academic and author, and has covered extensively the subject of anti-Arab racism in the United States. And I hope that we're going to be able to get him on the line, and I hope that we'll be able to talk to him. And I'll be able to talk, I understand, to my boss, Tony, who's running WBAI and who's running this pledge line today. And the number for that is 212-209-2950. Now, there's many reasons I want you to call that and pledge. First of all, I want you to keep the radio show going. Secondly, I want you to give because I need to get some wages. I can't go on working for nothing. Not only am I working for nothing, I'm paying for the telephone call every week for an hour. And I can't go on doing that. So Tony is looking forward to a bumper pledge. And if you want this show to continue, I hope you'll support us. 212-209-2950. And if I'm lucky, Tony's on the line now. Tony! I'm unlucky. He's not on the line. And that, I suppose, means that Stephen Salaita is not on the line either, unless I'm wrong. Stephen, are you there?
I am here.
Stephen, how wonderful. I really didn't believe that this technology would work.
Well, it seems to have worked this time.
Excellent, Stephen. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, tell me this, because, of course, I'm thousands of miles away. What was the popular reaction? I mean, I saw the crowds, obviously, but John and Mary Doe in the streets of mainstream America, what were they thinking, what are they thinking now, a couple of days after the event, about the death of bin Laden and what it means? And what do you think it will do for the very anti-Arab racism that you have researched so wonderfully?
It seems that the average reaction that I've been seeing among my colleagues, and I do live in small-town America in Blacksburg, Virginia, and, you know, interacting with people on Facebook and through email, etc., that most folks seem to see it as a moment of closure, right? That everything that happened on 9/11 and then subsequently with the invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan, somehow that door has been shut. And I think in that sense they're sadly mistaken, that probably this does not mean the end to imperialism or military aggression by the United States and its European allies. And also anytime a population sort of gets called out into the streets in a moment of nationalistic fervor, in the United States anyway, it's always going to involve at least implicit anti-Arab and anti-Muslim racism.
Well, I guess. But, I mean, let's deal with the first of the points that you made there. Mm-hmm. If there is a closure involved in this, surely that's the time then to end the wars.
That's what would logically follow, but I don't know that a lot of people are actually making that leap. I think for a lot of Americans, and our opinions vary widely on the matter, I suppose, but for a lot of folks, the goal was to kill bin Laden, and then anything else that happens beyond that is secondary or even tertiary. And so I think they also see it in lots of ways as a validation of the military presence in the Middle East and Central Asia.
Yeah, of course, bizarrely, you've got such a vast number of soldiers, and they're expending so many trillions of your hard-pressed dollars in occupying Afghanistan, and bin Laden's not only not in Afghanistan, but hasn't been there for many years, and didn't even have a phone that he could call up Afghanistan. So what's the point of fighting a war against people in Afghanistan whose only purpose in that war is to ask you to leave Afghanistan? If you were only in Afghanistan to get bin Laden, now he's dead and never was for 5 years at least in Afghanistan, surely that's a time to call it a halt.
I would agree, and I hope people continue to make the connection just in the way that you have. They didn't find bin Laden in Iraq. They didn't find him in Afghanistan. They found him sitting, as you pointed out in your wonderful commentary, in a fortified mansion without internet or telephone. It was right there under everybody's noses. So clearly something stinks here about all of these military engagements. And what stinks most about it are the civilian lives that are being lost, and also the lives of the American soldiers. And
many lives, how many limbs, how many mental healths, how many houses, how many livelihoods were wrecked over this last period.
Yeah, and the environment and the chemicals that get pumped into the ground, into the drinking water. I mean, it's horrible.
Now, Stephen, tell me about anti-Arab racism in the United States. I once read a book called Real Bad Arabs, REEL, which talks about the portrayal of Arabs in Hollywood films. But I'm beyond that, not actually all that aware of the extent of anti-Arab racism in the U.S. Can you tell us something about the extent and the quality of that?
Yeah, it's awfully extensive, not only in the images of Arabs and Muslims that are shown in media, news media, and then entertainment media, but also in the sorts of discourses that exist about Arabs and Muslims in the United States, and also the way that they're treated in political conversations. For example, we keep hearing after the death of bin Laden that we're waiting for reprisals from the Islamic world, and that makes it sound like it's a homogenous, political organization rather than a vast swath of the globe that encompasses diverse populations numbering probably 1.5, 1.6 billion people, right? And so I think people have an extremely narrow sense of, the cultural, national, historical diversity among Arab and Muslim populations in both the West and in Africa and Asia. And also, it seems like the Arab has become the preferred bogeyman, I guess, post-Indian wars, post-Cold War. Now you have the Arab or post-Korean War as well.
Well, that's right. Boris with snow on his boots just waiting to invade with the Red Army.
Yeah,
of course,
exactly.
No longer viable as a bogeyman.
Exactly. And the interesting connection between that is it was once the visage of bin Laden who was the one who was taking up the noble fight against the forward march of communism. But the Arab is always portrayed as culturally homogenous, prone to irrational fits of violence, incompatible with modernity, unable to exist within a properly democratic society, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the Arab revolutions have really put the lie to these mythologies, but they're still widely circulated and widely used.
Now, I seem to recall, forgive me if I get these details wrong, there was a moment when, in a public meeting during the last presidential election, someone shouted out, one of John McCain's supporters shouted out that Obama was an Arab. And I recall that McCain answered something like this: No, he's not an Arab. He's a decent gentleman.
That's correct.
Am I right about that?
I
wasn't
right.
dreaming.
It was a town hall meeting, and she was right in front of him holding the microphone, and she said she didn't trust him, that she thinks he's an Arab, and he shook his head and said, no, ma'am, he's not an Arab. He's a decent family man, which is a phrase that'll probably live in infamy. He's a decent family man. So you have that binary constructed between a decent family man on the one hand and then the Arab on the other hand.
Now, is this going to get worse? Not just anti-Arab racism, but Islamophobia, with this hue and cry about Pakistan's ambivalent role in all of this, and all the renewed, I suppose, revanchist feelings of revenge and so on about bin Laden. Are we likely to get a new twist? I mean, we saw the row over the mosque, which they always said was a Ground Zero mosque, which of course was neither a mosque nor was it in Ground Zero, but it was an Islamic center and it was a few blocks away. That, from our side of the pond anyway, seemed to die away. And the burning of Qurans flared up and died away too. Are we going to get a resurgence of these kind of things?
I hope not. It's hard to say. I'm skeptical. I feel that these actions, these horrible actions, don't exist in a vacuum, that they come out of a broader geopolitical context that includes, American military engagements in Iraq, in Central Asia, in other parts of the world, the support for the brutal dictators in Saudi Arabia and Bahrain, and these sorts of things. And so I feel like we can't look to the future of American attitudes towards Arabs and Muslims without also examining the geopolitical context in which those attitudes find a lot of their currency. And so I think that to really challenge the attitudes that a lot of Americans have about Arabs and Muslims, we also have to simultaneously challenge a lot of the geopolitical policies that engender those attitudes and that in lots of ways rely on those attitudes in order to be justifiable.
You're good, man.
Well,
how do we follow you?
Where
have you got a website?
I do, StephenSalaita.com.
That's Stephen with a V?
Yes, sir.
S-A-L-A-I-T-A.
Yeah, and
I
have two new books out. One of them is called Israel's Dead Soul. You can check them out on the website.
And what's the other one?
It's called Israel's Dead Soul is one, and Modern Arab American Fiction is the other.
Oh, that's terrific.
Yeah.
So Stephen with a V,
Yes,
Salaita,
sir.
S-A-L-A-I-T-A, all one word.
Yes, sir.
.com.
Yes, sir.
Well, look, I'm going to do that, and I hope one day, perhaps soon, I'll have you on my television or my British radio shows. Stephen, thanks very much for joining us, my friend.
Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
I really enjoyed talking to our guest there, Stephen Salaita. That's StephenSalaita.com, academic and author. And he's even got new books that we can check out. Thanks very much, Stephen. Let me see if Tony's on the line. Tony, are you there?
Why would I be there? Of course I'm there, George.
What a beautiful, velvety, dark brown voice you've got.
A beautiful, velvety, dark brown.
Your voice is for radio, man.
It's just early in the morning, and I've only recently awakened, that's all.
Now, my voice is going because I've been electioneering for the last 6 weeks.
And good luck with that, by the way. We're hoping that tomorrow, or at least by Friday, we can call you MSP.
Yes, I hope so. At around 5 a.m. English time, we'll get the result, or should I say Scottish time, on Friday morning.
Yeah, that's better.
So that's about midnight your time. So we'll talk, Tony. Now tell me, the pledge line is 212-209-2950. Do you want to tell us a bit more about the pledge line drive?
Absolutely, George. It's fun drive here at WBAI. This is how we keep the station on the airwaves. We don't have commercials precisely because that allows us to have voices like yours on the airwaves. So what we're doing this morning is asking listeners to pledge in support of this show. This is one of the shows, George, that listeners really love because they get to call in and participate on a weekly basis. Their voice is heard while your voice is heard. You have amazing guests, and adeptly, I must say, or deftly, rather, you handle the guests and the phone calls. I can't believe how much you fit into each program. And so we're asking listeners to call up. It really is. I'm really very impressed at the way that you're able to do that, and I've never heard any program do it better, frankly. Fitting in both that much content and allowing guests to also have a voice. So those folks who call in regularly, Monroe, we're expecting you to call up and pledge your support for this program. 212-209-2950 is the phone number that you're going to call. We're going to ask people to call this morning, George, and pledge simply because they appreciate the program. We're not going to offer them anything. We're not going to give them a premium. We're going to say, hey, you believe in this. You believe in the changes that are taking place at WBAI. You believe in the new program, and you believe in the mother of all talk shows. We need your support. The basic pledge level is a $25 pledge level, but we want you to pledge at the $25 level, the $50 level, the $100 level, whatever it is that you can do to support this radio station. Things have been changing at WBAI. Mr. Galloway is a huge part of that change, and your dollars say, yes, you believe in what's happening here and over there in Scotland. 212-209-2950. So to start this off, George, we're going to get 5 people to call up and just pledge at the $25 level. That's how we're going to begin, but we want to hear folks saying, I believe in what's happening on WBAI. I listen to the mother of all talk shows, and I support it. 212-209-2950. There's the first of our 5 callers.
First call, I can hear it ringing, yes.
Yes, it rings all the way over there to Scotland. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
The mother of all technology. 212-209-2950. That's the phone number to call. Be the next person to call. We're asking for 5 of you just to get us started. We have about another 20 minutes here to raise a few $1,000, so that means we've got to get those phones ringing consistently.
Yes, please. 212-209-2950. I'll regard it as a personal failure if we don't hit our target here. 212-209-2950. I can hear the phones ringing. I want to hear them ringing off the hook, and I hope that they'll not be $25. I think they'll be $100.
I believe so as well. That's what we need.
Tony, are you able to just tell me what it's like? What's the atmosphere like in New York over the killing of bin Laden?
Well, the atmosphere is incredibly interesting, George, and I have a different take on the whole situation. I'm afraid to go into the details of how I really feel about it. I'm not afraid, but I'm grateful that we have a station, WBAI, that can at least bring up some other points of view, to turn on the mainstream media, George, and to see everyone parroting the same thing when Fox News and...
Especially when it changes every day.
Absolutely. The story is changing. Consistently, he was armed, he's unarmed, there was a woman who was fighting as a body shield. Oh, she was killed by accident. What is the real story here? And do you ever believe... Can you just believe what your government tells you? As I was bringing up on the air this morning, George, the Jessica Lynch story, the Pat Tillman story, the weapons of mass destruction, Colin Powell sitting in front of the UN. Can you believe anything this government says? Because
this is the really dangerous thing. Because they've told us so many lies, even when they're telling the truth, people don't believe them. The boy who cried wolf.
Absolutely. Or the government who cried bin Laden.
Yeah.
212-209-2950. Bring your credit card, your MasterCard, American Express, or Visa to the phone and make your pledges heard this morning for the mother of all talk shows. A $100 pledge. In fact, there's someone out there, George, who can give us $1,000. Somebody who can pledge.
There definitely must be one person out there that could give me that badge by calling in and donating $1,000.
We'll have to have you shake their hand when you come to the city next.
The next time I'm in the city, we should have a public event and speeches and so on, and raise money that way if you're allowed to do that.
We're allowed to do that, and you're pretty good at it, by the way. 212-209-2950. That is the phone number to call to make your voice heard and to keep his voice heard. Yeah, so, George, I hear this story, and I remember Fox News reporting back in 2001 that bin Laden was dead. I remember that the BBC said something similar. I remember in 2002 it was reported that he was dead. Several outlets reported. So how is it, it's like the guy is resurrected and killed again and again, at least 9 times. People have said, Benazir Bhutto said back in 2007. I actually saved this when I saw it on my YouTube favorites because I thought it was important.
I knew Benazir, God rest her soul, extremely well for nearly 30 years. And she misspoke.
Did she?
About that, yes. It wasn't...
Correct me. What did she say that was wrong?
She misspoke. She said that he's dead. She meant to say that he might be dead.
I see.
Because her case was that Pakistan didn't know where he was. Nobody knew where he was. And that can happen in public life.
To anyone.
I believe his daughter. I believe his daughter.
Who said?
His daughter said today that he was taken alive on Sunday and he was killed.
Wow.
Cold-blooded execution.
I wouldn't be surprised at all, and I just don't know what to believe from this government, and that's the point of it. And it's why independent media is so important.
It's so vital. Imagine.
Because
if we were reliant on Fox and Sky and even CNN, but we've got WBAI, and it's a precious thing. But we can only keep it if people give 212-209-2950. It's been some seconds since I heard the phone ringing.
Well, there you go. It's got to keep ringing, George. That's how we keep this station. Because there are no commercials on this station, you can come onto these airwaves and you can put it forward as you see fit. And, there's no one, I don't call you and say, well, George, you can't say this or you can't say that. I might someday. No, you can't say this or you can't someday. It is about truth. It is about finding the kernel of truth in the story and putting forward what the mainstream media is not. And so we're asking you folks, if you believe in WBAI, we're not offering you a premium this morning. We're asking you to support the programming, the unique programming on WBAI, the kind that you can't hear anywhere else. You can't hear this voice. Turn left or right. We're in the middle of your dial. You can tune in left. You can tune in right. You will hear nothing like this. You will hear nothing like the mother of all talk shows, and certainly no voice like George Galloway's. That's why every one of your pledges is incredibly important. 212-209-2950 is the phone number that you're going to call. But that isn't the only story, George, that you've had on this program that has been different from what we're hearing in the mainstream media. This is what happens each week on this show. Your guests are incredible. And the listeners get to participate as well. Those of you who
it's
call...
a voice for the voiceless, who would never get on Fox or on CNN. They certainly would never get on it twice. I was on that Bill O'Reilly once, but I've never been on again. Although, thanks to YouTube, a very large number of people have seen it. But I remember I came back from Iraq in August of 2002, having successfully persuaded Saddam Hussein to allow the United Nations arms inspectors back in.
Oh, that helped.
And I went into Fox News, and the first question was, so what's it like sitting with a madman who's preparing to invade the United States? And I said, you've got that the wrong way around, don't you? And, of course, I never got asked back on Fox News either. But I'm on WBAI. It's the only place in the United States that you will hear me, and I'm grateful to Tony for that. 212-209-2950. We really, really need your pledges.
We really do. It's the way this station stays on the airwaves. You're not going to hear commercial folks. You're not going to hear from some pharmaceutical company. You're not going to hear from some fast food company that's going to sell you some poison, both of which would sell you poison. You're not going to hear from some insurance company. What you're going to hear from is you. You're the only folks that we are beholden to, and it's the very reason that we chose to put George Galloway on this station. We want to bring you unique voices. We want to bring you unique programming. It's why WBAI matters, and it's how we stay relevant. If we are here parroting what every other news outlet says, we simply don't matter. But because of you, we can bring unique programming. We can bring relevant programming to the airwaves. And unique that you cannot hear literally anywhere else, not just in the New York media market, but generally around the country. 212-209-2950. Bring us your $100 pledge just for your support of this station. Bring us your $25 pledge. Do it at the level that you can do it. But we want this morning, we want that person who can give us a $1,000 matching pledge this morning. We want that pledge to come in so that we can encourage other listeners to call and match that. There's a person out there who listens to your show on a weekly basis, George, who can afford to do that for WBAI, who can afford to keep this program on the air and to keep this station on the air.
Well, the right wing have got these shock jocks, don't they? Rush Limbaugh and I don't know the other names, but I mean they're famous around the world. These kind of
Sean Hannity, Bill O'Reilly,
right-wing televangelists. They're not short of dollars, and they're actually talk about poison. Never mind pharmaceutical companies. These right-wing shock jocks are dishing poison into the American body politic with potentially catastrophic results. So there's a battle of ideas going on. And if 1,000 flowers are going to bloom, they all have to get their share of sunshine and water. And there must be enough progressive people in New York and the tri-state area to make WBAI financially secure and able. I mean, look what you've had today already. You've had Amy Goodman. You've then had me, or you would ordinarily have a phone-in show with me. And what's the name of the economics professor that I spoke with?
Richard Wolff.
Richard Wolff is a world-class proselytizer for an alternative economic view. Now, I mean, that's worth its weight in gold. Richard's worth his weight in gold.
He is.
Of course, like me, he's brought to you entirely at no expense. So we need the station to be supported. 212-209-2950, because if we don't grow, then clearly Rush Limbaugh will be getting all the water and all the sunshine, and I promise you, we'll all perish under that tree.
We certainly will, and it's one of the things that they, and as you said earlier, George, they have money on their side. They've got the likes of the Koch brothers. They've got the likes of Donald Trump. They have money on their side. We don't have those kinds of financial backers. In fact, the only financial backers that we have are you, our listeners. I don't hear now that phone ringing, George. That means that we need to give the number out once again.
Exactly. 212-209-2950. Please, I want to hear the phone ringing, and I want to hear about $1,000 donation. There must be one of my listeners who will pledge $1,000, and I hope there are plenty who are pledging 100. But if you can't do 100, do 25, because we need all the dollars that we can raise on this. It's not every week that we have these fund drives, and the pledge line is 212-209-2950. I hear the phone ringing.
It needs to keep ringing. We have about just 12 minutes left to keep that phone ringing, George, and we must consistently for this next 12 minutes. We need to raise about another $3,000 in this final 12 minutes of the program.
Okay,
so
we've got 12 minutes to get $3,000. Somebody do the maths. What do we need
if
to
we can do 30
per
callers
minute?
at the $100 level, we will get there.
Okay.
Or 15 callers
please.
at the $200 level, we will get there. But if we get that one benefactor who can call in and pledge at the $1,000 level, that will certainly help us to get there quicker.
212-209-2950.
That's the number to call. And you know, on the right, George, they have a couple of issues that I always say. They can say Jesus or taxes, and everybody lines up immediately. Everybody falls right into line. We don't have that kind of issue on the left because we have a diversity of ideas. We have a big tent in which we try to include everyone, and we bring all of those folks, and we're a community radio station.
They've purloined Jesus. I believe in Jesus. They've purloined Jesus. People who really believe in Jesus believe in the prophets, peace be upon them. These people believe in the prophets and how to get a bigger piece of them. These are hoax, Elmer Gantries. We're the real deal. We are actually fighting for humanity. We are the people who are arguing that we are all our brother's keeper, that we are all God's children. That's the essence of the argument that I tried to make, and that's the basis of every political position that I take. But the right wing, yeah, you're right. I mean, these televangelists, if you don't write me a check, you've had it.
Yeah.
You're going to the fire.
Can you imagine? Maybe we should try that tack. Let's see, George. We got 11 minutes. Dare we? 212-209-2950. This is WBAI. We are in fund drive mode. If you are one of our volunteers, you're not here yet. Please make your way down to the station. We're at 120 Wall Street. We can certainly use your help this whole day answering phones, and for the rest of this month, pretty much, we'll be fund driving. So that means we need you to come down and participate in that way. But right now, those of you who are calling, those of you who can, call up, pledge at the $1,000 level, pledge at the $100 level, whatever it is that you can do. Make WBAI matter. 212-209-2950.
I'll be asking next week everybody that phones up if they answer the call. If I'm allowed to do that, you'll tell me if I'm not. But I mean, I do think, nothing's for nothing, yeah? You can't run a radio station without funds. And we have eschewed the idea of commercials. We don't have what the BBC in England has, a kind of mandatory, compulsory tax. The only way that we can stay alive, the only way the mother of all talk shows can continue on the air is if people give. 212-209-2950, that's the number. 212-209-2950. We're trying a different model. We want you to pledge because you believe in the program, not because you're going to get a premium, not because we're going to send anything to you, but because the programming itself is so strong. Does it matter to you? Does WBAI matter to you? Is the mother of all talk shows worth your time, worth your money? Tony, am I allowed to say this? I'll go for dinner with the first person to donate $1,000 on that pledge line, 212-209-2950.
I don't know that I believe you. We'll see.
I don't know if I'm allowed to, but I'll definitely go.
You're certainly allowed. We would certainly do that, George. We'd have to make those arrangements separately. But if someone does pledge that $1,000, we'll see
I'll
that
go for dinner, but I don't mean I'm paying for the dinner. They'll need to pay for the dinner.
Oh, I see. Yeah, they'll have to pay. Yeah, you can get a...
I'm a Scotsman, remember.
So what happens is, that's funny. You get a no-expenses trip paid to WBAI, and then you can have dinner with George Galloway. George, we have this special going on at the little store across the street. If people go by there at the store and they mention the name of your show, the Mother of All Talk Shows, they can get a 6-pack of soda at the regular price.
Wonderful.
Oh, it's just a special that we're doing. 212-209-2950 is the phone number to call. Folks, we're asking you to believe in something and to support what you believe in. That is WBAI. It's the mother of all talk shows, and its dynamic, brilliant host, George Galloway. We're not trying to create a cult of personality. As hell, it's already been created.
No, not at all. It's only 1 hour a week, for goodness sake.
I'm saying.
But,
yes, 1 hour a week. But what we're asking is that you support the station because you believe in what we're doing. You believe in the change. We've made quite a few changes here at WBAI in recent weeks. We've brought on Richard Wolf, as you brought up, George. We've brought George Galloway on. We've put 5 O'Clock Shadow on, which does incredible investigative reporting. All of this because you said you wanted a change here at WBAI. You wanted to hear something different. We brought Gary Null back to the airwaves because that was the #1 request of our listeners, as a matter of fact. All of that has happened. We're asking you to support those changes, to support the new look of WBAI, the moving forward stature or status of WBAI. Make that call. And again, George has said, if you call up and pledge that $1,000, he's going to sit down and eat a meal with you. Can you imagine? I don't even get to sit down and eat with him. Okay, maybe I do on occasion when you're here.
Everyone who gives $1,000 can have a dinner with me. I'll stay in New York long enough to have lunch and dinner with everyone who gives $1,000.
You're going to get me in trouble. 212-209-29.
The best looking ones I'll have twice.
Which one? What did you say?
The best looking ones I'll have dinner twice.
Well, then I'll have to go have dinner with you twice. 212-209-2950. To do that, of course, it would have to be on a credit card. You'd have to make that pledge on a credit card, American Express, MasterCard, or Visa. Those are the cards that we will accept here. Folks, we only have about 7 minutes left. We've still got to raise about another $2,000 here. Every call counts. Every call matters.
7 minutes for $2,000.
George, people say to us, that sometimes, not everyone, some people complain, you got so many of these premiums, these items that you offer people on the air. Why can't we go back to the old model of just people giving money because they believe in the station or believe in the show? And that's what we're trying to do this morning. That's what we're asking for. We want to hear from you because of what you hear on these airwaves. It's WBAI 99.5 FM, your Pacifica station in New York City. Right in the middle of the dial we are for your convenience, but we're only here with your help, folks. You ring us into being with each of those phone calls. 212-209-2950. Make a $100 pledge and say yes to the mother of all talk shows. Make a $100 pledge and say yes to George Galloway on WBAI. Mr. Galloway.
Thanks, Tony. I mean, it's really very important. I really believe in this station. I really believe in the show. I believe that reaching the people of the United States is a very important part of what remains of my political life's work. And
if only we could vote in Scotland.
Yes, well, you know, we are two people divided by a common language much of the time. But the more I travel in the United States, the more I realize that it's entirely wrong to judge the United States by the political leaders that it has, especially prior to the current president, though I've got more and more anxieties about him too. But the reality is the ordinary people in the United States are exactly like the ordinary people everywhere else in the world, with the same hopes, the same fears, the same anxieties, the same aspiration. And we all want the same kind of security and comfort in our lives, and above all, we want to pursue happiness, as your Constitution pledged itself to do. And of course, part of that is the plurality of media and information. And it simply won't exist. It will be a plant that dies if it's not watered. And you're the only people who can water it. 212-209-2950. Please call.
Please make that phone call. It's imperative that you do. We have about 4 minutes left, folks, before George has to move on and we move to the next program. But your calls make a difference. Remember, we are offering you George Galloway and the mother of all talk shows. That's all. We're asking you to support quality programming. We're asking you to support Pacifica Radio. We're asking you to support WBAI. We're not offering you anything this morning except good programming. If, of course, you want. George has said that if you pledge at the $1,000 level using your MasterCard, American Express, or Visa card, the next time that he's in town, he'll find a way to eat a meal with you. Maybe down the street there where we ate last time you were in town.
That was very nice, by the way, yes.
That was nice. That was
St. Patrick's Day or the day before, yeah.
Yeah, somewhere around, right, the day before St. Patrick's Day, I believe, and we went to an Irish restaurant of all things.
It was indeed.
212-209-2950. This is WBAI 99.5 FM, Pacifica Radio in New York. We're asking for your support this morning. There are no commercials. You're not going to hear from McDonald's. You're not going to hear from Pfizer. You're not going to hear from any of these large corporate bodies because that's not what we do here. What we do here is ask our listeners to vote for what they believe in with their dollars. To keep WBAI on the airwaves, to keep George Galloway on the airwaves, do that by making that phone call. 212-209-2950. We have just 3 minutes left, George. We've got to
3 minutes, and
goal.
We've still got to get about $1,500, I think.
I believe that's the case. 212. I'm watching the tally over there. It's
look, people queue up to have lunch and dinner with me. I promise you that.
Queue up? What does that mean? You guys aren't that good with the English over there.
Okay, they form a line.
I see.
There must be somebody in New York in the tri-state area who wants to have lunch or dinner with me. I know I'm not what I was, but I'm still not a bad-looking guy. And I've got a silver tongue.
I'll say. And we have to
So please, lunch or dinner, $1,000. 212-209-2950.
$1,000 pledge, but you can also pledge at the $100 level, just to say that you believe in this program, just to say that WBAI matters to you. 212-209-2950. I don't hear phones ringing, George. That does not get us to our goal. That final $1,500. There we go. Maybe that person will pledge at the $1,500 level.
Cup of coffee for $100. Can you have a coffee with me for $100?
I think not. I will not allow you to say that on the air. Erase.
I'm selling myself too cheaply.
That will not be happening. There's no selling of self, but But if someone wants to pledge at that $1,000 level, we will certainly make that happen. But I will go certainly and have a cup of coffee with you for $100. But that means that you're going to have to pledge the $100. 212-209-2950. 2 minutes left, folks, for you to get in here to make your pledge and to say, I believe in this thing. I believe in the fact that you're not offering us any item, that you're simply saying, vote with your dollars for what you believe in. That is what we're asking of you. It's WBAI. You know what this experiment is about. It's about democracy on the air. It's about freedom of speech on the air. It's about having the ability to say what it is that you think is truth. Of course, backed up by facts, but to be able to present that when every other media outlet is parroting the same point of view and the same BS in many cases. Mr. Galloway, we got about a minute left.
Yes, well, my last words would be to endorse yours, that if we're going to have that plurality, we're going to be able to lay out the facts as we see them. We may be right, we may be wrong, but at least we are allowing people with an alternative point of view, either on the telephone or with the presenter's conch in front of them, to make a case that they believe in. I have never, in public life, said something I didn't believe in. I'm capable of not saying something I do believe in, because diplomacy requires that from time to time. But you will never hear a word that crossed my lips which I don't believe to be right, I don't believe to be true. If that means anything to you, call us, 212-209-2950.
And anytime
Tony, it's been marvelous.
It's been very marvelous. I want to encourage folks to continue to call 212-209-2950. Anytime that phone stops, George, I get frightened. Thank you so much for being with us this morning, George Galloway, and thank you for being on WBAI.